Well, good evening, and I want to thank you for joining us here this evening on the Fireplace Show. And today, as always, we've got a special subject matter expert that's going to be joining me, and we're going to be talking about the transitions in wood stoves, gas fireplaces, wood fireplaces that make this an excellent value for you today as a consumer. So stick around with us. We're going to be right back, and we'll get the show started. Well, welcome back. Glad you could join us today. So like I said, today we're going to be talking about wood stoves, gas fireplaces, gas inserts, all kinds of hearth appliances that you can use in your home to help you. Now, keep it in mind, the Fireplace Show is directed to answer consumer questions. So we're going to be talking in consumer terms and consumer wording. We would also invite you to share this out on your own social media to help the people in your market area get familiar with today's hearth appliances. So as always, I try to bring on a special guest each and every week, someone that I call a subject matter expert. And this evening, it's no different. I've got an old friend of mine that I've known for a few years, and his name is Edmund Poplawski, and I hope I pronounced that right. So, Edmund, how you doing tonight, brother?
Great, Jerry. Thanks for having me on the show.
I hear you. So let's start out. Let's tell people a little bit about your career in the chimney, the venting, and the hearth industry, and tell them where you're working today and what you do, please, sir.
Well, Jerry, I've been in the industry, and we talk about the hearth and chimney industry. It's the same industry, just two different things. The chimney end is more the service installation end, and the hearth industry is more the appliance end. So about 15 to 17 years ago, I started out with a chimney manufacturer. So I was very involved in the venting end, the chimney end, researching products, developing new products, everything to deal with venting hearth appliances. And that was wood stoves, gas stoves, things like that. And then after that, I started to look at the hearth industry more because I had a lot of involvement in it. And I moved over to the hearth side. So I worked for a couple manufacturers in between then. And right now I work for a great family-owned manufacturer, very large manufacturer in the hearth appliance industry called Kozy. Kozy Heat's out of Minnesota. They're still family-owned for over 40-some years. We make everything in America. It's all made in Minnesota and distributed right across the whole entire country. So I really enjoy what I do.
That's great, brother. Well, I've been in this business about 40 years. So I was in it probably about the time you might have come out of high school or whatever. So as we go back, but, as I came into this industry, at the time I entered it, it was basically in the hearth industry. The only thing we were dealing with back in those days were wood stoves that were basically boxes that we burned a little wood in, we got some heat out of, and maybe some gas logs once in a while. But the big thing was the wood stove. The wood stove took off in the late 70s. This was from an energy crisis. What started the wood craze in America was President Jimmy Carter. He got on and did a fireside chat one night back when we were in an energy crisis and we were having problems getting gas. And Jimmy Carter told the American public, you need to do the following things. Number one, cut your thermostat down. Number two, wear a sweater. And number three, he said you need to start using your fireplace. And believe it or not, Edmund, that was the launch of the fireplace and the wood stove craze in America. And probably in the late 70s, were you still in high school at that point? That kind of thing like that?
Yeah, Jerry, in the 70s, I was actually just pre-high school, pretty much.
Okay, so as this gone on, this was problem. But at the same time, Edmund, do you remember when gas was started to go up? Did your parents wait in gas lines? Do you remember that time in history by chance?
Very much so, Jerry. I remember the oil embargo crisis of the 70s and all the things you talked about where there were gas shortages. I remember my parents waiting in a gas line where there were odd and even days. You can only get gas on certain days, and you were limited to certain amounts, and all those type of things. And I remember my parents even talking about we never actually burned wood. We actually burned coal, which was very abundant in the area that I lived in. But people that burned, especially oil, it was a very trying time because oil just didn't just heat their homes. It it actually powered their vehicles. So it was a very trying time for this country.
Yes, it was. So, Edmund, you just said something that's key. And let's share this. You are from Pennsylvania. Am I correct? Did you grow up in Pennsylvania?
Correct, Jerry. I am from Pennsylvania, grew up there, and still currently reside there.
Okay. So in Pennsylvania is kind of a unique state because that's one of the few states in the country that we see people use a lot of coal in homes to heat their homes. You know, it's probably, I don't know if it's as widespread as wood, but coal, is it still a fuel that's commonly used in Pennsylvania for home heating?
In Pennsylvania, it actually still is. It's not as widespread as it used to be. Over the years, it's become a little less, but there are still a lot of homes that are heated by coal-fired furnaces and actually some coal-fired stoves as well. Like I said, that's changed a lot, and because we have good access to it in the anthracite region of the country, it's still prevalent. But that's all changed over the years, and everything's gravitated towards wood, and now gas is probably the most prevalent fuel source for heating homes.
Well, let's Dale, you just said a word, so let's explain what that word means, which was, you said anthracite. And a lot of people may not know this, but there's basically two kinds of coal. There's anthracite and there's bituminous coal. In layman's language, a lot of times we call it hard coal and soft coal. You may even call one stoker coal. So can you tell us a little bit about what's the difference in anthracite and bituminous coal?
Well, basically, there's different sizes, different types, larger oil-fired furnaces where you have a big hopper, and you might even have a 55-gallon drum, which is what I had growing up. We filled that with coal, and it fed the coal into the furnace, which actually burned the coal, heated the steam that it went up to the pipes, and then the byproduct was ash. And then you had other coal, which was basically in hand-fired appliances like coal stoves, or actually there was many coal furnaces that were hand-fired as well, which used we'll call that the hard coal, I guess I want to say.
Yeah, anthracite, probably we always referred to that as hard coal. A lot of more pure coal, and it probably didn't have as much soot as the softer bituminous coal. But I can remember when I was a kid, even down here in North Carolina, that many of the schools, I can remember seeing great big stacks of coal, because many of our schools back when I went to school were actually heated from coal-fired boiler systems, where someone had to feed the coal into it, and that's how we got a lot of heat. A lot of people may not know this, but even pizza ovens, a lot of pizza ovens up in the Chicago area, they were also fired with coal back in those days. But when I want to get it off track, I want to talk about wood. I want to talk about gas tonight. So as we look at this industry over the last 40 years, there's been a tremendous amount of change in stoves. And one of them has been the EPA has come in, and the EPA has decreed that we have to get the emissions down, less smoke, less harm to the environment. A lot of people don't know this, but on a properly burning wood stove in today's world, we have less emissions than we do that same wood produces in the environment, simply laying in the woods and rotting. So I want you to identify a couple things for me, Edmund, to start with. First of all, we hear the term cat stove, or it may be a catalytic stove, or it may be a catalyst stove. It's all the same thing, just different names. So can you share with our listeners, what is a cat stove? When you hear catalytic stove, what does that mean to a consumer, sir?
Okay, so there's basically, what I would say is three different types of stoves. You have your standard wood stove, which well, let me say this. We started out with wood stoves, like you said earlier, that were just a box. It was basically a metal box. It had no glass, it had a door on it, and an air control. You fed it with wood, you closed the door, you didn't see the fire burning, you adjusted the amount of air that went into it, because that's what makes your fire burn quicker or hotter or less, adding amounts of air. And then we kind of gravitated from that to adding things like fire brick, which actually reflects heat and retains more of that heat in that firebox. We added things like air tubes, which is a way to infuse more air into the fire, because maybe a lot of our homeowners don't realize, what 3 components you need to actually create a fire. So whether you're creating wood fire or gas fire, you need 3 things. You need fuel source. So in this case, we're talking about wood. You need oxygen, which would be any type of oxygen feeding into the fire. And you need a spark or heat, something to start that fire. Without one of those 3 things, you can't have a fire. So they all play a very important part in creating fire and heating your home. So like I said, we went from just a plain box, then we developed into a non-catalytic, which is what we'll call it, which was basically just a box of fire brick. It's got air tubes, which actually infuse more air into it. That created fire. You created your heat, and then your exhaust from your fire in particulates went up and out your house, either via your stovepipe and then your chimney, your manufactured chimney, or if it was an insert, a lot of times it went up your fireplace flue and out of your home. And then over time, we've created things like hybrid stoves or full catalytic stoves. And what a hybrid stove, it's just a combination of a non-catalytic and also a catalytic. So what happens with a catalyst is it reburns more particulates. And why that is a big thing is, as you mentioned, the EPA got involved. And that was back in 1988, approximately. They got involved and they set emission standards that all manufacturers of stoves had to comply with. So basically, those very dirty burning, polluting old stoves of the last 100 years that maybe created 70% in pollution were a thing of the past, because the EPA set standards that we all had to manufacture units and appliances to comply with. So, like I said, over time, they've developed a lot. You've gone from having just a box to stoves have added a window for not just radiating heat, but also for viewing. So a stove actually does 2 things. One, it creates heat for your home, but it also provides an aesthetic look, and you can actually see a fire burn. It's a very nice burn. It's very calming to see any type of flames. So when we talk about a catalyst, what ends up happening is so I talked about oxygen and fuel. So if you're looking at a fire in a stove, let's say, there's 3 different types of burns you can have on a stove. So it's right at your fuel source. There's usually an air control. So air gets infused right there. You have what you call maybe your first burn. So you have your fuel load, which is your wood, infusing with oxygen, and you're having a burn there. Then those particulates go up and right to the top of the box, and usually you have a set of air tubes up there. And what they do is infuse more oxygen at the top of your stove, which creates a second burn, which also burns up some more of the particulates and creates more heat for your heat production from your stove. And then catalysts, some will have what we call sometimes a third burn, where it redirects that exhaust gases around the top of that box and usually goes through a catalyst, which is basically a honeycomb-shaped device made of different types of metals and materials that when they get very, very hot, they actually reburn some of the particulates that are coming through and being the byproducts of combustion from that wood. And why we have a catalyst is all because of the EPA regulations. So some stoves can meet standards without a catalyst just because of the design of the box and the way they're put together, and some stoves can. So if your particulate emissions are too high, then sometimes the only way you can reburn those particulates before it goes into the atmosphere is through a catalyst. So that's kind of the real differences with it. It's a catalyst is kind of like a scrubber to make it a little cleaner. And this became a very big thing in 2020, which was last year, because the EPA set very, very strict emission standards for the industry for 2020. You had to have a very low particulate emissions or your stoves couldn't be sold. So any of the stoves made last year and moving forward have a very, very low emission rate. And what that actually did, Jerry, was it actually reduced the amount of available models for manufacturers from, I don't know the exact number, but it's somewhere around 250 to 300 different models across all manufacturers down to approximately 60 or 70. It actually reduced it quite a bit because those older, higher particulate emitting stoves just didn't meet the standards. So a lot of the new stoves you see today for sale, they're very clean, very efficient, and it's really hard to hit those standards.
Gotcha. So whenever this happened, when the EPA changed their requirements, what happened to the stoves that different dealers had in their warehouses on display? What did the dealers do with these stoves? Are they allowed to still sell them, or was the sale of these disallowed, Edmund?
So any of the stoves that didn't meet the 2020 standards, the dealers had a certain period to actually sell those units. And after that period, which was at some point last year, they extended a little bit because of the COVID situation that's been going on, but not very much. So after, I think, August approximately of last year, an actual fireplace dealer could not sell those units anymore.
That's what I mean.
A private individual, of course, could sell it or something like that if they had an old stove. But the whole idea was for the EPA to try and get some of these inefficient and more polluting stoves off of the market.
Right. You and I both observe a lot of Facebook groups, and some of them are wood stove users, like wood heat, other things. So a lot of times we see a lot of people that may be offering advice or talking about things that may not be exactly up to par. So let's go through one. You mentioned a while ago that today's wood stoves often have a glass on them. But years ago, wood stoves had glass on them, but the glass never stayed clean. It's fine. And when you started burning the stove, pretty soon you didn't have a clear glass. You had a black glass, and it was just completely covered where you couldn't see the fire. How do today's wood burning appliances keep that glass clean, Edmund?
So, Jerry, that's a great question. And as we talked about earlier, we talked about the three different things you need for wood or any fire. You need a fuel source, you need oxygen, and you need ignition. So one of the ways the manufacturers have kept these units burning a lot cleaner and the glass actually staying cleaner is what actually created the dirty glass was actually a sooting or some creosote. It's just a very incomplete burn off of wood products. That created a film and sometimes a tar-like substance that adhered to the glass. So manufacturers started developing what was called an air wash, just a way of actually running air across that front of the glass. So it usually runs from the top down, and it just runs some more air through there. And when that air, of course, is infused with that fire, it actually allows it to burn more, and it's cleaner, and you don't actually get as much particulates on the glass, and the air wash actually keeps the particulates off of that glass. So you'll see a lot of times, a lot of these stoves, you burn them, and the only time you may get a little bit of, dirtiness is when it's burned really, really low. And when I say low, when you turn the air that is entering that stove down low to get a longer burn, you might see a little bit of darkness. But once you start that stove up and it gets a little hotter, it actually burns that off the glass.
Okay. So what we have out there also is what's called a fireplace insert. And a fireplace insert is basically a stove that is made to sit into the fireplace. Now, back in the early 80s, when I first got in this business, back in those days, we just slid stoves into the fireplace, and we just took the damper out and let the stove vent naturally. But 1984, NFPA, through their 211 standards, said you can't do that no more. What you got to do is run a connector pipe up through that chimney. So this is part of your background, which was You work for a chimney and venting manufacturer company. So what's the importance of running this connector pipe, not just because codes and standards say so, but why is this in the best interest of today's consumer if they're going to install a wood burning insert to a fireplace to run this pipe up through that chimney to size that chimney? What's our purpose here in doing this, Evan?
Okay, Jerry, there's actually a couple of purposes of it. One, the unit itself is designed and engineered to run on a certain size exhaust pipe. So most inserts are designed to run on a 6-inch diameter. So just think of a round pipe that has 6 inches across the center. So diameter is actually across the very center. How wide is that pipe? So they're actually designed to run at optimum efficiency. That means they're designed to burn the fuel correctly. When you adjust them with different air, it's operate correctly on that size flue. So when you just years ago were to just put that in and just kind of exhaust that into an open chimney, most of your chimneys are a lot larger diameter, anywhere from 6 5/8, let's say 7 inches, up to as large as 24 inches in diameter, the inside flue of your chimney. So a couple of things. One, it's not very efficient, especially with newer stoves. They're designed to have a certain, we'll call it an exhaust, just like exhaust on your car. Another thing is when you run that chimney liner, which is what we call them, a flue pipe, a chimney liner. There's multiple names for it. When you run that up from your insert all the way to the outside of your house, it's actually doing several things. It's exhausting all those byproducts of combustion, which is what wood burns. Wood burns and it has particulates, etc. It gets those up and out of your house. It keeps them contained in one pipe, and they go up and they go out of your house. Also, you can have it, a lot of times we recommend, especially chimney manufacturers, when you deal with solid fuel, to actually insulate these pipes. Because what happens when creosote forms, and I think a lot of homeowners don't realize what creosote is. So maybe we should explain that a little bit too. So creosote is actually a byproduct of incomplete combustion. So what happens a lot of times is if you're not burning seasoned wood, and we say that a lot in these forums and things like that, and to most homeowners, they hear the word seasoned wood. So seasoned wood is a term that says wood should actually have dried for a season. That means it's been cut, it's been split, it's been stacked, it's had air going through it, and it's actually basically dried out enough to be able to combust. Proper seasoning is determined by what we call moisture content. And optimum moisture content is about 15 to 20%, right, in that range. And what that means is that wood is dry enough to burn optimally in your stove and create the least amount of creosote when it burns. Because if it's wet and not seasoned, what ends up happening is it doesn't burn completely, and that incomplete combustion actually is what causes creosote. And creosote is actually very dangerous. It could be anywhere from a light coating to a very heavy glazed tar-like substance, and that all depends on the amount of incomplete combustion and how fast those exhaust gases coming off your stove cool down. What problems are with having that is you can actually have things that we call chimney fires. Chimney fires can burn at over 2,100 degrees. That's pretty dangerous. And if you think why we talked about why you have to have a chimney liner or some type of flue pipe exhausting these gases, is imagine if you just had this creosote forming inside your chimney and you had a fire. And somehow that fire actually was able to get through the, things like the mortar in between your bricks, or sometimes chimneys have clay flue tiles. They could be cracked. It's actually very dangerous because that fire can actually get hot enough and ignite, the framing of your home. So it's very dangerous. But if you keep that contained in that one pipe, there's less chance that's going to happen, and it's going to exhaust those gases out of your home. So
sounds like a winner, brother. That's all good information. Now, as we go forward, what we've looked at, what makes today's wood stove such a good value? Naturally, prices are higher than they used to be, but at the same time, that's kind of what we wanted to zero in on tonight, is what makes today's wood burning appliance such a value for the consumer.
So, Jerry, if you think about the old type stoves we mentioned earlier, they were just basically a box, metal box where you put wood in, it burned, and that was it. They were approximately anywhere from 10 to 20% efficient, maybe, if we're lucky. So most of that, even though you had radiated heat off that stove, or if you had an open wood burning fireplace, that was even less efficient. A lot of that heat was actually coming off there and actually going out of your home. So you're having a lot of heat loss. It was very inefficient. You were taking more wood to keep that stove or that insert hotter, or that fireplace hotter, to radiate more heat in your house. So let's fast forward over the years with all the different developments from efficiency, emissions, and things like that. Your modern wood burning appliances are anywhere from 60 to 70 some percent efficient. So it kind of flipped it, where it was 70% inefficient, we'll say. Now it's 70% efficient. So you're able to burn less wood, so use less fuel, and gain more heat in your home. So it's keeping more of that heat in your house and not actually wasting it out into your environment. There's different types of wood stoves. There's steel stoves. There's cast stoves. There's some people call them soapstone type stoves. None are actually better than the other one. They just heat a little different. Your steel stoves will heat up quicker. They'll give you more heat in your home quicker. But once you stop feeding wood in that stove, it'll cool down a little quicker than, say, maybe a cast stove, which will retain heat a little bit longer, but it also takes a little longer to heat up. The same thing with your soapstones. They take a lot longer to heat up, but they also retain the heat and radiate it off the stones of the stoves. So none gives you more efficiency, I wouldn't say. It just radiates it a little different. And I think some of the things you need to look at when you look at wood stoves is, do you want it for heat for your entire house? Is it supplemental? All these things play different parts into choosing the correct stove for your house. There's different sizes. There's different shapes. It all depends really what you want to do with it. Where years ago it was we had a few different sizes, and you either tried to put more wood in or less wood in to generate the amount of heat you wanted. Now you can actually get the correct size stove, put a good amount of wood in. You can adjust the air that goes into that stove, and you can get higher heat for a shorter period of time or lesser heat for a longer period of time. There's nothing better than to load up that stove before you go to bed and still have heat in your home when you wake up. And there's a lot of stoves that can do that today, and there's a lot of stoves that can't. Some you might have to wake up in the middle of the night to get some heat out of them. All depends on how long they can burn on that load of wood.
Yeah. And one of the amazing things is, over the past 40 years, we've come out with what I'm going to call a hybrid fireplace, which is a fireplace. It's actually a wood stove built into a wall, can operate with very close clearances, but these critters can actually heat entire homes. And I call them hybrid fireplaces. They could be called a zero clearance fireplace. A lot of people may miss out on that. They may call them factory built fireplaces, other things. But are they fireplaces today that can throw out enough heat to heat an average size home, Edmund?
Yeah, Jerry. Matter of fact, the company I work for, that's what they started with. Years ago, they started with, and actually still produce, a factory-built wood-burning fireplace. We produce a lot of gas products, but one of our main things that we've produced for years was a factory-built fireplace. And what a factory-built fireplace is most people think of their homes, and if they've got a masonry fireplace where they've got, a brick fireplace with a nice hearth and it's open, and they could put a couple of logs in there and open their damper and, burn their wood. It's really nice, and it's a nice, open fire, but 70 to 80% or more of that heat is just kind of going up and out of the house. And then another thing to remember too with those units is when you're not burning, you're actually getting cold air coming in your house, because you can't completely seal a chimney with an open fireplace. So heat rises, cold air settles. So when it's not burning, you have cold air coming in your house. So what we did years ago was we came up with a factory-built wood-burning fireplace. And what that is just think of a factory-built box that you can actually build wood framing around to where the standoff. So what a standoff is it's just usually a piece of metal that sticks out a certain distance from that firebox that you can run 2x4s, we'll say, or combustible materials up to. And that's a sealed box. It has a metal flue, which actually goes up and out of the house. And they are very efficient compared to old open wood burning units, because they can heat, up to even 30 some hundred square foot homes in a lot of instances. That's a pretty good amount of square footage to heat with a fireplace. But they're so efficient that we can actually accomplish that nowadays.
Got you covered. I want to say hello to Lynn. This is a friend of mine, just tuned in, said she was sharing our show. She's not a fireplace industry. She just thinks this is a really interesting subject matter, Edmund. So you're doing good. So let's switch a little bit. Let's go over to the side of gas. Like I said, many consumers are switching over to gas as a supplemental heating system, including myself. I mean, if you came to my house, it's only going to be gas in all the fireplaces we have, except we have 2 electric fireplaces. So gas is what's in there. And we have gas inserts in 2 fireplaces. Another one, we have vented gas logs in that fireplace. But over the years, gas burning stoves and gas burning inserts in fireplaces have commanded a large part of the hearth industry. Am I correct when I say that, Edmund?
Absolutely, Jerry. And that's one of the things that, the company I work for, Kozy, saw. We started out with wood, but we saw really what was happening with gas and how large of a market gas was taking over. And just so our homeowners understand, there's 2 types of gas. You have natural gas, which is what we call, it's usually piped into your house from the street, which actually comes from a compressor station, etc. And then there's propane. When we talk about gas, we're talking about both of these. One is just if you don't have natural gas to your home, it's your propane truck brings propane, fills up your propane bottles, and that's how you heat with it. So we're talking about the same thing, just 2 different types of gas. But I want to make sure also that homeowners understand there's a little difference with wood and gas. With wood appliances, remember we talked about what you need? You need air or oxygen, fuel source, and ignition for wood. You need the same thing for gas. The only difference is with wood, that air and oxygen is actually coming from inside of your house to feed that fire through a little air control on your unit. With gas, we refer to gas as a direct vent unit. And that doesn't matter if it's a gas stove, a gas insert, or a gas fireplace. And what that means is that no air is actually coming from your home. That means that air is being drawn directly from the outside of your house into the whatever exhaust pipe you're using, if it's an insert or a stove or fireplace, there's different types of way to vent that. But each one brings air from the outside down into your appliance. It combusts, and it actually exhausts that gas outside of your home. So there's nothing being used from your house. And that box is actually sealed. So what that allows you to do is actually get the full radiant heat from that unit and not have any chance of anything ever coming in or from your house. You don't have to open up a door and have any little backdraft of maybe some smoke from a smoking log, things like that. Very efficient, and there's so many advanced developments with gas stoves. It's incredible.
You know, Edmund's funny thing, but I can remember in 1986, and there were some guys from Minnesota. It wasn't your employer, but their names were Chimney, and they had started a company by the name of Heat and Glow, and they brought this fireplace to the HPBA show, which is the National Fireplace Show. That's kind of like the trade show for the industry. And this fireplace vented out through the side wall. It didn't have to go above the roof. And the whole industry looked at this like, this is crazy. Nobody's going to buy that fireplace with a pipe sticking out the wall. Now, Edmund, today, were those people right or wrong that consumers are going to be buying these fireplaces with a pipe running right out the wall instead of having to go above the chimney, even though some of them do go above the roof, but running out through the wall? How big a percentage of the industry is the direct vent gas technology in this day and time?
It's a huge part, Jerry. I'd say at least 80% of the fireplaces and stoves that are sold, gas fireplaces and stoves, actually direct vent, because they're all direct vent, but they direct vent right outside, either directly behind the unit or maybe just up a few feet and right outside of your home. And all they have is just a very small cap on the outside. And it's just amazing how far our industry has become, has come, in not a very long time, only in the last, we'll say 20 to 30 years, but major advancements in the last 10 years.
Right. And what they're doing is they're venting through a relatively inexpensive venting system. The inside of this venting system is made out of aluminum, and the outside of this venting system is made out of galvanized metal. Am I correct?
That's correct, Jerry. What it is when you're talking about venting gas appliances, if it's a stove or a fireplace, you have basically two pipes, and there's one inside of the other. So we usually have two different sizes, and depending on how large the unit is, it will take the smaller one or the larger one. And one is the smaller one is basically 4-inch in diameter, so it's a pipe that's 4 inches across on the inside, and that is centered inside of another pipe that is approximately 7 inches in the outer pipe. And what that does is it brings air in between the inner and the outer pipe. That's the air that comes into your appliance, and then it exhausts the gas byproducts, because everything you burn has a byproduct. Wood has creosote where gas doesn't, but gas still has things like carbon monoxide and other byproducts. It exhausts that out of your home. You never want things like that in your home. So direct vent gas appliances bring fresh air in, they combust, and they exhaust the bad stuff out. Very, very simple. With a gas insert, it's just a little bit different. Gas inserts usually have two pipes instead of one inside the other, just because we talked earlier about wood and chimney liners. With a wood stove, you just need one because you're bringing air from inside the house. With a gas appliance, you need two because you're bringing air from the outside of the home. So basically you have two pipes just running side by side. One brings fresh air down into this unit and the other one exhausts it out. Just a little difference because you're using the chimney as your cavity to run your liners through. But gas appliances have come a long way. It's it's pretty amazing to see the transition just in the last 5 years, never even the last 10 or 15. We've had such advancements. It's incredible. Anymore, you can buy, let's say, a gas fireplace for just about any reason. You can buy it to heat your home. You can buy it just for looks and not even worry about the heat, because there's ways to actually even take some of that heat out of your home. There's ways to actually put some of that heat into other rooms of your house. There's ways to install it where you can put wood or shiplap or some type of combustible material right up to the edge of that fireplace. Even run a TV very low down towards that fireplace, because of the advancements in technology that have allowed these units to be installed in just ways that not even 3 to 5 years ago would never have been thought possible. So it's pretty amazing how they can be installed. And then when you talk about the other advancements, like I said, I told you I started out with coal. Well, a lot of people start out with wood. And then over time, they just get a little tired and busy and things like that, where they just can't be feeding wood into their stoves all the time. The natural progression is to gas, because with a gas appliance, you basically have what we call a remote control. You come home from a long day of work, you sit down, you grab a nice coffee to relax, you take your remote, you hit one button, you turn on your fireplace. Or better yet, while you're at work, you can have a thermostat that's actually part of that remote that actually will operate your fireplace very safely, because like I said, it brings everything from the outside in and exhausts everything else, so nothing's coming to your home. So just like the furnace in your basement, that you had a thermostat on the wall that heated your home 24/7, you can actually do that with a gas fireplace now. And the even better thing is wherever that remote goes, that's your thermostat. So it doesn't matter if it's on the wall way behind you like it used to be. Not anymore. It's sitting right by your favorite chair in your living room. You're looking at that beautiful fireplace, and it's keeping your comfortable temperature at 72, 73, 74, whatever you want. That unit can be operated on the thermostat. Or if you want it to look better, you can operate it on manual and turn those flames all the way up and have a beautiful big fire, or turn them down a little bit and have a little less heat coming out of there.
Right.
The adjustability and options are amazing on these units.
Well, see, that's what I was actually just went over to get, which is a thermostat like you're looking at right there. That's a Skytech thermostat. It's set up to that direct vent insert. It's about 20 feet across there. And with this, I can do several things. I can simply turn the flame on. I can also set the temperature I want the room. Like right down, don't know if you can see it, but I've got it set at 72. So when it gets down to 72 degrees, when it gets down to that point, it comes on. When the temperature is satisfied, it cuts off. I can also set a timer on this, Edmund, where I can say, okay, run the unit till 10 p.m. tonight, shut off if you want to do it. But wherever I lay this unit at, that's where it's going to monitor the temperature from. Am I correct?
Absolutely, Jerry. It's just the features are amazing on these units. They're so simple. I mean, let's face it, we all have busy lives, all of us. People work, you have family things. It's not always the best thing where you have to say, oh, I forgot to put wood on the fire and the fire just went out. So now I got to go and spend 20 minutes, get the fire going. I didn't have enough wood inside, so I have to go outside and bring some more wood inside. And that's great. I love wood burning. I actually have both in my home. I actually have a wood burning insert in my basement. I have a gas fireplace in my living room. So I actually heat with both. I could tell you 99% of the time I'm running the gas fireplace, because it's simple. It gives me everything I'd like to see in not just heating my home, but just sitting there on the couch watching any type of fire is mesmerizing. So fireplaces have actually gone from more strict heating units to a very visual aspect and architectural design in many homes nowadays.
Right. And the other thing about most of the units that are made today, does the power, if the power's off, is the unit still working with either gas or wood? Does the unit still work? Except for the blower, everything's still going if the power were off for an extended period of time. Am I correct?
Yeah, Jerry, that's actually correct. That's one of the nice features about wood or gas. Both don't require any power. With the gas appliance, for example, the only thing, like you mentioned, they have a lot of different options on them. They have a blower, which all gas fireplaces radiate heat. So heat naturally radiates around that firebox. And when I say that, whether it's a stove or an insert, there's usually an air chamber that goes around that box of the fireplace. And heat just naturally radiates around there. It naturally radiates off the glass. So you have heat that actually moves through your home. A fan just accelerates that and pushes heat a little quicker. So you wouldn't have the fan running, but you would still have the unit burning, because all units have a battery backup, or if they are when they say a millivolt system, and I'll explain to homeowners what that means. Usually you hear a couple of things. You hear an IPI system, which just means intermittent pilot, or you hear a millivolt or continuous pilot type system. A lot of your IPI system, you actually have the option to turn it on a continuous pilot, so it actually does keep running. But the IPI part of it is where the unit is burning no fuel. It's not turned on or anything until you either push on or that thermostat actually calls for heat, and the unit will spark, ignite the gas. There's a bunch of safety measures that it actually makes sure that pilot is lit before it turns on your main gas supply. And then it ignites your burner, and the unit operates like it should. You can actually turn that unit on a continuous pilot, so the pilot is on all the time. And we always recommend that in the colder temperatures, when it hits like say 40s, 45 degrees or below, because your unit's going to come on and off actually quite a bit, during those times. But the other option is some have what's called a millivolt system, where a lot of that is you have a manual igniter on your underneath your fireplace, let's say. So you would turn your gas pilot on, you would hit your igniter, which is just a sparker. It sparks, ignites that pilot, and the pilot stays on all the time. Now they have a manual control where you can turn it on or off, or just like you talked about that Skytech remote, you can get a very simple remote that just turns the unit on and off. But your millivolt systems don't have all the nice extra options as your IPI systems do have. But they will either one will operate during any type of power outage, which is a great feature, because let's face it, we've seen a lot of power outages for various reasons. The ice storms in Texas, where people were without power for a long time. I live a little bit in the country, so I've lost power for a day or two many times, and my gas fireplace keeps me heated, and I would never even know the difference.
Yep, and that's one of our problems in the Southeast, is we don't have a lot of snow, but we do have ice storms. And ice storms are renowned for tree limbs falling, knocking power lines down, hurricanes, other things. So when you get in here, this is one of the features of modern hearth appliances they're going to be backup heating systems. They can give you light. Some even have methods of cooking on them, other things to survive in your home when disaster strikes such as that. So Edmund, let me ask you, is there anything else you would add in about today's hearth appliances and what makes them a value for an American consumer in this day and time?
Well, Jerry, I think any modern hearth appliance you would pick would be a good choice. But there's a lot of different things you need to look for. What do you want the appliance to do? Where are you going to put it? How big of a home? Do you want it more for aesthetics? Do Do you want it more for heat? Do you want it for a little bit of both? And the really nice thing is there's appliances out there that can fit pretty much anything you want to do with them. Let's face it, there's bigger fire equals more heat. We all know that. More fire, the more heat. We see a lot of homeowners today that ask for a larger fireplace. And a lot of times that may be because TVs have increased in size over the years, as we all know. I remember years ago a 36-inch TV was a pretty big TV. Now your average TV is 60, 65 inches. That people are putting in their living rooms. Well, the larger the TV, sometimes that small fireplace looks kind of small. So we've developed things like we call them linear or wide fireplaces, where you can get fireplaces 40, 50, 72 inches wide. Where a lot of times if you're putting a 60, 70-inch TV, it's maybe something that you want to choose to make it look very proportionate. So your wide TV has a nice proportionate width to your fireplace. We've got traditional, we've got those wider linear styles. One of the newer products that we've developed is it's called a Bellingham fireplace, which is we call it a landscape design, where it's a little combination of a traditional and a linear style, a wide fireplace, where it's a little taller, but it's still got that width, and it takes up that space, for that nice big wide TV that you're putting in. And fireplaces keep developing every day, Jerry. It seems like every time we turn around, they're getting more efficient or another way to install it. And I'll give you one other example of a way to install it. We talked about direct venting right out to the front of your house. All right. Well, let's say you have a living room that is in where you want to put the fireplace is right on the front of your house. And maybe you don't want a direct vent cap right there next to your front door. Well, a lot of our fireplaces today you're able to use something called a power vent. And a power vent is just let's say a large fan incorporated into that venting, which now doesn't require natural draft. And natural draft is just, hot air and exhaust rises just naturally. This actually takes it and forces it out somewhere else. So say you wanted to exhaust that down across the bottom of your basement and out the backside of your house. Well, there's actually developments now with fireplaces where you can do things like that. I mean, you can exhaust your fireplace 100 feet away from where it's installed, which is pretty incredible. And these things have come along in the last, several years. One other popular thing that's been happening anymore is electric fireplaces. I know you mentioned that you had two of them yourself. Those have been very popular lately just because some people just want to put them where you can't get any venting. Maybe it's a bedroom, maybe it's a condominium or a townhouse, which maybe some of the listeners might have, and you share walls and things with other homeowners. Well, you can't just vent through their home, so maybe an electric might be the way to go. Yeah. So the industry is developing quite quickly with a lot of different options.
Yeah, both myself and Cheryl, she actually has a fireplace, electric fireplace that's a wall hanging fireplace. So when you look at it, it's actually like a picture frame up there, but she can turn on the flames, get a really good look. Then she can turn on the heater. It's got a little heater, so to warm up her whole office up there. So that's a good way. And then my office upstairs the same way. I've got a little electric fireplace in there. Turn it on. I can heat up the fireplace. When you get, as you get a little older, you get a little cooler sometimes. So that's one of the things I have to go to now to keep myself going. Well, brother, I want to appreciate you being on here tonight, sharing the information. Let's tell people again, let's give your company a plug that's let you come on here tonight. Who is it that you represent, and what's their website, Edmund, if people want to look up some great fireplaces? Because I know that that's what you guys have got.
Well, Jerry, company is called Kozy Fireplaces. We've been around over 40-some years. It's still a family-owned company. We're located in Minnesota. The website is www.kozyheat.com. And we have everything from, like I said, wood burning units to electric units to gas units and a little bit of everything in between. And, we like to pride ourselves in having a lot of all American made products. We try to keep everything made right in the, upper Midwest part of the country and ship it all over the country and actually into Canada as well.
That's great, brother. Well, man, I appreciate you being on here tonight. It's been a help. And hopefully some people will look up your Kozy Fireplaces and go from that point. Maybe you'll see some sales happening. It's a great product, folks. A lot of great product on the market. Can help warm your heart, warm your house, warm your soul. That's what it's all about. You agree, Edmund?
Absolutely, Jerry. Thank you so much for having me tonight.
You got it. And this is Jerry Eisenhower. I want to thank you for tuning in with us tonight. You need to know it's an honor, it's a pleasure, and it's a privilege to be able to talk to you this way on every one of our broadcasts every week. The Fireplace Show is sponsored by CVC Success Group. And what we do at CVC is we help our clients take their business dreams and turn them into their business realities. So tune us in next time on another episode of The Fireplace Show, and we look forward to seeing you down the road. Have a great evening.